in the forgotten spine of Appalachia lies a stretch of land where even the map refuses to remember. Locals call it the hollow that hears, because every sound, every breath, every crunch of leaves that goes back, like something unseen, is always listening. In that hollow once stood the Beckett homestead, a place so cursed, even the most hardened hunters wouldn't cross its tree line after dark. It began with whispers in the 1950s, a family that refused to leave their mountain despite floods, disease, and government buyout offers. When the roads washed out and the bridges collapsed, the Becketts stayed. They said the mountain provided everything they needed, but by the 1970s, people began to vanish: hikers, loggers, surveyors. The sheriff's reports were strange: tents found torn apart, bones arranged in perfect spirals, and personal belongings stacked neatly at the edge of the Beckett property. No blood, no struggle, just absence. Then there was the voice. Witnesses few who dared to come near spoke of a woman's voice, calling from the woods, soft, pleading, childlike, "Help me, please." And when someone went to look, they never came back. The first real investigation happened in 1981. 3 deputies entered the hollow with flashlights, radios, and shotguns. Only one returned: Deputy Robert Hill. His hair was white, his speech disjointed, his eyes empty. He said he saw the Becketts, but they weren't human anymore. They moved wrong, he muttered. Their skin, it looked stretched, too tight, and the smell god, that smelled like death, was cooking. He never spoke again after that night. Locals avoided the area, but in 1994, a group of college students came searching for Appalachian ghost stories to document for a film project. They never uploaded anything. What the police found months later were fragments of their tapes, warped, burned, yet somehow still humming when played back. The footage was almost unreal. A wooden cabin built into the mountain slope, symbols carved into trees, piles of bones that didn't look entirely human, and in one clip a figure standing by the tree line, its mouth too wide, eyes reflecting light like an animal's. Some say the Becketts began as ordinary people, driven to cannibalism after a blizzard trapped them for weeks. But others believe something older lived beneath their land, something they fed on, were fed to in return. One of the last surviving relatives, an old man named Jeremiah Beckett, once told a traveler, "It wasn't hunger that changed us, it was the mountain. She picks who stays. The deeper you go into the hollow, the quieter it gets. No birds, no wind, just the sound of dripping from somewhere unseen, like a heartbeat in the dark. People claim the soil there is black, mixed with ash and something oily. Some believe it's the remains of all who disappeared. Others say it's what keeps the Beckett clan alive. What truly terrified locals wasn't just the killings, it was the ritual. Survivors described shrines made of bone and moss, shapes impossible to describe, and firelight that never seemed to burn out. In those moments, they swore they saw figures crawling just outside the glow-thin, hairless, whispering prayers in a language that didn't belong to this earth. The Beckett house itself is said to still stand, though no one knows where. Some hikers claim to have seen lights flickering in distant windows. Others hear humming at night, like a lullaby carried on the wind. One traveler found a wooden toy, carved roughly by hand, with a name burned into the bottom: Eleanor Beckett. When he brought it home, his dog wouldn't go near it, and every night for a week, he swore he heard someone whispering his name from the corner of his room. And perhaps the most chilling account comes from a rescue worker who ventured to close to the hollow during a search for a missing hiker. He said he saw movement figures watching from the ridge. They were tall, wrong-shaped, and when his flashlight caught one's face, it didn't blink. It just smiled. The radio crackled once, before dying. He swore he heard the same words the missing people heard before they vanished: "Stay for supper." That hollow was sealed off decades ago. The government claimed it was unsafe, full of sinkholes and unstable ground. but there's no record of any geological reports, just sealed documents and redacted names. Still, every few years, someone goes missing near that ridge, and the pattern never change. No blood, no struggle, just silence. Locals say the Becketts were never found because they were never meant to be. The mountain keeps its own, and if you ever find yourself driving through Appalachian back roads and your GPS glitches and the forest gets too quiet, don't stop. Don't answer if you hear a voice calling your name, because some families were never meant to be forgotten. They were meant to be feared. Asterisk, they say that if you stand near the edge of Beckett Hollow on a windless night, you can hear something moving beneath the earth. Not the rustle of roots or the settling of soil, but a pulse, slow and rhythmic, like a massive heart buried deep below the mountain. When the sheriff's office quietly reopened the Beckett case in 2003, they didn't announce it publicly. A series of disappearances had started again, same area, same pattern. The lead investigator, a man named Daniel Reeves, was obsessed with the idea that the Becketts had survived. He found something strange on the old property records. The land had never officially changed ownership. The deeds stopped with Jeremiah Beckett in 1968, and then nothing. No taxes, no sale, no demolition permits. Just silence, as if the family had melted into the mountain itself. Reeves brought a small team of forensic surveyors. What they found wasn't a house, it was a labyrinth. Beneath the collapsed cabin were tunnels, hand-dug and reinforced with wood that had turned black over the years. The deeper they went, the stranger it got. The walls weren't just dirt. They were lined with carvings, spirals, runes, and faces with hollow eyes. Some looked human, some didn't. A few 100 feet in, the air changed. It became warmer, heavier, filled with the smell of decay. Then came the sound of low, wet dragging from somewhere ahead. Reeves ordered everyone to stop. The team's lights flickered. When they steadied, one of the surveyors was gone. His rope had been cut clean through, as if by a blade. But no one heard a thing. When Reeves reported the incident, the sheriff ordered him to abandon the search. But Reeves didn't. He returned a week later alone, leaving behind his radio logs as the only record. On the final tape, his breathing quickens. "I see them," he whispers. "They're waiting by the walls. I think they've been here the whole time." Then the static erupts, and beneath it, for just a second, another voice whispers, "Family's hungry." That tape was sealed in evidence. But years later, a local journalist named Erin Marsh found out about it through a retired deputy. She tracked down the Beckett site in 2012. What she found was worse than anyone imagined. The land had grown over completely, swallowed by vegetation, but the earth still breathed. In her notes, she wrote about feeling vibrations beneath her boots, like something alive, moving just under the roots. She camped there for one night. Her recorder captured faint voices between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. A child, laughing, then whispering, then weeping. At 3:17 a.m., the laughter stopped. The last thing the mic caught was the sound of bones snapping. Her tent was found empty, zipped from the inside. Local legends changed after that. People stopped calling it the Beckett Hollow and started calling it the Hunger Ground. Hunters said the soil there rotted anything that touched it: boots, traps, even steel. Trees grew in twisted shapes, bark darkened with streaks that looked like veins. And deep in the heart of the forest stood something new, a wooden cross made from 2 human femurs, tied with braided hair. Some folklorists believe the Becketts had become part of the land, a form of Appalachian revenant myth. The feeders, they called them. Not ghosts, not quite human, but echoes of those who'd consumed too much of their own. The more they ate, the less of themselves remained. By the time outsiders saw them, they were something else entirely: blind, pale, skin stretched so thin the bones glowed through. Still, one story stands out among all the others. A park ranger in 2016 reported hearing an emergency beacon go off in the old forest zone. He followed it for hours until the signal led him to a clearing that shouldn't have existed. No satellite maps, no records. There, he found a pit lined with animal bones and a single flashlight still flickering. The beacon was still transmitting, but it wasn't a modern model. It was a 1981 deputy unit, the same type used by Robert Hill's team decades earlier. As he picked it up, the radio hissed, and through the static came a voice, "You shouldn't have come back." Then the battery died. He ran, leaving everything behind. When the other rangers returned the next morning, there were no footprints in the snow, except his. Locals avoid the area completely now. The state fenced off the perimeter, citing unstable terrain and contaminated groundwater. But everyone knows the truth. There are still Becketts down there. Maybe not in the way we understand living, but existing. Waiting, feeding. Some say the mountain itself keeps them alive. Others think they're just a warning, reflection of what happens when humanity turns inward, too isolated, too hungry. Whatever the reason, the hollow still whispers, and those who listen too long never return the same. Even the wind that blows from that ridge smells wrong, sweet, like burnt meat, and when the fog rolls in, sometimes you can see shapes moving behind it, slow, deliberate, like something dragging itself forward, learning to walk again. By the time the last official report on the Beckett Hollow was filed, most people assumed the story was finished. The land had been sealed, marked as a toxic site, and quietly erased from public databases. But in 2021, a wildfire swept through the area, one that burned unnaturally slow, refusing to die even in the rain. When the fire crews finally reached the epicenter, they found something beneath the ashes. A cellar door, blackened but intact, bolted from the outside. Inside were the remains of dozens of animals, human bones, and strange stone idols carved into shapes that defied understanding, spines bent backward, skulls stretched too long. In the center of the room was a table. On it a single jar filled with dark liquid, and a photo half-burned. The image showed a group of people standing in front of a cabin, their faces smeared with soot. On the back of the photo was one word: home. The state tried to dismiss the discovery, claiming it was an old cult site, unrelated to the Becketts. But then came the testimony that changed everything. A drifter named Caleb Norton showed up at a hospital in Hazard County days later, half-starved, covered in scratches, and babbling about the hollow that breathes. He told doctors he'd been living off-grid for months, scavenging in the forest. Then, one night, he heard a voice calling his name, his full name, though he'd never told anyone out there who he was. He followed the voice into the mist and found a clearing lit by what looked like hundreds of candles made from fat, and at the center stood a woman with eyes black as tar. Her skin cracked like old bark. "She told me to sit," Caleb whispered in his recorded statement. "Said the family was hungry again. Said they waited for me." He tried to run, but the ground shifted beneath him, soft, pulsing, like muscle. The trees seemed to bend, their roots clutching at his legs. He swore the faces of the Becketts were growing from the bark, mouths moving silently as if whispering prayers. "They weren't dead," he said. "They were part of it. The whole mountain I've with them." He escaped only because the fire spread faster than the whispers. But the burns on his arms didn't match fire damage. They were shaped like hands, human hands, pressing into his flesh. After Caleb's testimony, the site was reclassified as a restricted contamination zone. But privately, one agent from the state's environmental division, Rebecca Hayes, wasn't satisfied. She gathered Caleb's notes, the old tapes from Deputy Hill, and Aaron Marsh's recovered journal pages. The stories aligned too precisely to dismiss. So she went up the mountain herself. Her body was never found, but her drone footage survived. It starts: normal trees missed, burnt earth. Then, about 11 minutes in, the drone passes over a clearing shaped like a spiral, and in the center, Barely visible beneath the ash are rows of mounds, fresh ones. As the camera tilts lower, the soil begins to move. Fingers thin, gray, almost translucent push through. Then faces. Dozens of them. The footage cuts out. That video never saw the light of day officially. But snippets leaked online, fueling conspiracy threads and ghost hunting videos. Most people wrote it off as CGI yet. Those who lived near the mountains began to notice something new. A faint humming noise carried by the wind at dusk. Like voices humming the same few notes in perfect, broken harmony. Old-timers swear it's the Becketts, singing to the ones who listen too long. And lately, hikers have gone missing again, one in 2022, another just this spring. Rangers found their tents untouched, meals half-eaten, footprints circling the campsite before vanishing entirely. One searcher left a final log, entry before his GPS died. There's something down here that remembers. The ground feels warm. It hums when I touch it, and I swear I can hear. Breathing? Now, the entire ridge is closed, but people still drive past at night, daring each other to stop and roll down their windows. Most don't hear anything, just silence, and the faint crackle of old trees in the wind. But a few, they say, they hear a voice, a woman's voice, soft and close. Stay for supper. The camera would fade out here quietly, letting the audience sit in the tension, unsure if the horror was human, supernatural, or the mountain itself consuming those who trespassed. Because in Appalachia, they say the mountains don't just keep secrets, they keep what belongs to them. So, what do you think really happened in Beckett Hollow? Was it just the result of generations of madness and hunger? Or something far older, buried in the bones of the mountain itself? If this story sent chills down your spine, imagine what else is still waiting out there, untouched, unseen, and whispering through the dark woods of Appalachia. Hit like if you made it through this nightmare. Drop a comment, telling me what theory you believe, cannibal curse or something not human at all, and make sure to subscribe, because the next story is even darker. And remember, in Appalachia, the dead don't stay buried,